All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you to everyone out there, as always, for watching, for listening, however you consume Talking Buffalo. I appreciate you guys very much. I also appreciate today's sponsor, Sunny Reds, 1841 Abbott Road, just down the road from Highmark Stadium, about 5 minutes from there. Great place, man. Good eats, good drinks. Love the vibe there. If you have not been to Sunny Reds, do yourself a real solid and go check them out. All right, so I'm a little bit confused about this episode because of the timing. The shows are mixed up. Now, normally I would have for the Sunday night video live / Monday morning podcast, my guy Joe from Queens. Typically, he's on, but I had to switch things up here. Joe decided that this Sunday was going to be a good night to have date night and spending more time with his wife, which I think is stupid. He considers that more important than talking Buffalo, a backstabber, a heel. I think he went to see John Oliver and Seth Meyers or something like that, he said. Anyway, Joe's going to be on live on the video side Monday night, 9 p.m. That podcast will drop on Tuesday. I'm going to spend today, which I originally planned on doing for tomorrow's show, discussing some defensive line prospects that I very strongly feel Buffalo Bills fans should start to get familiar with because one, maybe two, hell, maybe even three of these guys that we had on today may be a Buffalo Bill in less than a month. So that's what we're going to do today. The Bills are 100% going to address defensive line in the draft. I would bet money, like literally right now, at least two of their first, say, four picks are going to go to the defensive line. Here today, I'm going to help get you familiar, if you're not already, with a solid handful of these prospects. These are for sure day one, maybe day two guys as well that we're going to hit on today. Guys that I think are pretty good fits, and not just good fits, very realistic draft candidates for the Buffalo Bills. Not really sitting here today trying to educate you much on them. That's not what I do. Plus, I'd be faking my way through it if I tried. Not very good at that. There are many other Bills content creators and media people out there much more versed when it comes to a lot of these prospects than I am. But I'm pretty straightforward. And I tell you that my knowledge on at least some of these guys, I would consider like mild to moderate right now. I'm still working on, man. I mean, I'm watching a lot of highlights and I'm reading and I'm listening from a lot of the experts to really catch up on some of these prospects better for myself. What I will do is tell you some stuff about them. And again, a chance for you to get a little more familiar with some of these dudes who I'm willing to bet are linked to the Buffalo Bills in mock drafts and other discussion and speculation plenty. If they haven't been already, certainly over the next handful of weeks leading up to the draft. And I mentioned mock drafts. Speaking of mock drafts, kicking off the first of what will be 4 weekly Bills 7-round mock drafts starting this week on Talking Buffalo. David Tilton from Cover One is going to join me, and we'll be doing our first Bills 7-round full mock draft on this Thursday. And I like to say this too. It's not just us firing up the simulator and making picks. I mean, we have some good discussions. I've been doing this for several years now on the show with a variety of guests. It's not even just so much about the pick. It's about seeing the board play out and kind of, speculating how things will go and kind of offering trade potential scenarios, just a bunch of different things that we paint in these mock drafts, which I think make them not just informative, but also fun as well. But anyway, David Tilton from Cover One this week. Then the following week, Anthony Prohaska, one of my absolute favorites, also from Cover One. He will be on the following Thursday for our second Bills mock. And then the week after that, my guy, the incomparable Bruce Nolan, will be back on the show. And I'm sure that will be an outstanding and informative mock draft. And then the last one, the week of the draft, going back to the Cover One wheel, one more time. My boy Aaron Quinn, who has not been on the show in quite a long time, he will return, and we will be doing our final Bills 7-round mock draft together. So that's going to be coming up on the show over the next handful of weeks. Before getting to D-line prospects quickly here, a pretty significant weekend of Buffalo Bills news and notes. And of course, the big news, cornerback Christian Benford signed a 4-year, $76 million extension. My first thought when I heard that early Saturday afternoon was, holy shit, they got another key player done before the draft. Shocking to me, shocking in a good way. My second thought was, well, holy shit, that was cheaper than I expected. Now, look, full details are not out as of this recording, which is about 9:30 or so late here on a Sunday night. But regardless, I thought Christian Benford was getting 22 to 25 million annually. So I am legitimately pleasantly shocked. Shocked that they got the extension done because of the money I thought he was going to get. I thought this would be a long, played out negotiation. It almost feels to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but it almost feels to me like Christian Benford almost kind of gave them a hometown discount because, again, 19 million a year. That's a handful of million less than I thought he was going to get. And it's not just me, too, by the way. Every person I've talked to this weekend or that I've read or that I've listened to on podcasts or broadcasts, many of them very credible as well, by the way. They figured that Christian Benford was going to come in at well over 20 million. I think this is another great job by Brandon Beane and his staff. I mean, it's not just Brandon Beane by himself. Beane and staff by striking when they did, getting a very good young player locked up long term while that player is actually still ascending and has room to even grow even more, and doing it before he gets to even take a little peek out of into the open market. Feels very similar to me right now to what they did with Spencer Brown when they signed him. Probably saved a handful of million per year with Spencer Brown. And I kind of feel like they're doing the same right now with Christian Benford. So the Bills have their CB1 locked up for the next 5 years. That's really great. Brandon Beane has had perhaps an historically good offseason with locking up his own. I can't remember the last time the Bills or any team for that matter locked up so many core players long term in the offseason before the draft. I mean, you're talking Khalil Shakir, Terrell Bernard, Greg Rizzo. We'll throw Josh Allen in there. I mean, he got a contract extension. He wasn't going nowhere anyway, but they gave him a new deal. And now Christian Benford. In a billion years, literally in a billion years, I don't think I ever would have expected Brandon Beane to get all those long-term deals done with still a handful of weeks before the draft. It's just, it's incredible to me. And other than James Cook and Connor McGovern, you look at this roster and you could argue their entire under 30 core is locked up now beyond just next year. They're not going to play this year out and then have a bunch of guys wondering if this whole team is going to dramatically turn over after this year. The answer is no, it's not. This is very much a team that, as long as Josh Allen stays healthy and as long as he's playing at the level that he is right now, they are primed to be in the mix for years to come. So many important pieces are locked up right now. And I mentioned James Cook. One last thing that I want to dive into these D-line guys. Speaking of James Cook, my very interesting comments coming from Sean McDermott, especially Brandon Beane on Sunday at the NFL owners meetings in West Palm Beach. And we'll talk about more on the show tomorrow, what's going on, proposed rule changes. We'll hear, I'm sure, more from Beane, McDermott over the next few days, and we'll kind of react to that. But Sunday, I really wasn't expecting to hear too much, and we did. It sure, to me, and probably to you too if you heard the comments, it sure sounds like an extension with James Cook ain't coming anytime soon, if at all, before the end of next season, let alone before it. Brandon Beane said, and this is a direct quote, "I don't see us getting something done anytime soon. we're on to the draft. Just because we don't get something done this year doesn't mean we can't get something done before he's a free agent. And I'm like, boy, that pretty much screams that they're letting James Cook play the season out. And then they'll see what happens after that. My gut tells me, I don't have any inside information, just my gut. My gut tells me that the Bills aren't too pleased with James Cook's public negotiating demands, whatever you want to call it, the money that he wants. He's been very public about the $15 million per year, multiple occasions. I don't think the Bills are too happy about that. Now I'm making an issue of it. And my gut also tells me that the Bills don't think he's worth remotely close to what he wants either. At least not now at this time. Being spoke like Cook still has plenty to prove. At least that's the way I interpreted it. And he talked about it being kind of like a showcase season to demonstrate his worth, just whether it's for the Buffalo Bills. And he also mentioned all the teams in the NFL. It's almost like, hey, you got to give me another good year and then we'll talk money. Now how James Cook handles this spring and summer, given that it's very unlikely he's going to get a new deal, this could be a major Bills storyline going forward. And one other note that kind of ties the James Cook comments and where he stands alongside the Christian Benford extension, kind of tie those two together. Giving Benford that extension and getting it done now, that gives Brandon Beane an easy opportunity, if he wanted to use the franchise tag on James Cook for 2026, if they so decided. Now, had Benford not gotten a deal done and he goes out and he plays really good again, there would have been a very strong case for Brandon Beane to use the franchise tag on Christian Benford so they didn't lose him after the season. In fact, that would have been something I would have bet heavily on. But because they didn't, and look, I like Connor McGovern a lot, but I don't think he's worth like offensive line franchise tag money if push came to shove and they wanted to keep him but couldn't get an extension done. I think they'd let him test the market. But James Cook could be a tag candidate next year. So him playing out this year and then getting tagged in 2026, that gives the Bills 2 more years of James Cook before they potentially move on from him, with only having to pay him like top end running back money once. And that would be next year if they tagged him. Right now, his contract this year is only like 5-point-something million. That's a bargain for what he brings to the table. So I think the franchise tag is 100% at least on the table with James Cook. And I'm sure that's not lost at all on Brandon Beane right now. So that's important. And look, one last thing about James Cook real quick, and we'll talk about this more throughout the week. I don't think, I think Brandon Beane and maybe the organization is not thrilled about the methods that James Cook's doing publicly, wanting to get his money. But I will say, I do think that this is an organization and the players that absolutely love James Cook. He's not a villain. He's not the bad guy. He just wants to get paid. Okay. That doesn't make him a bad guy. And you can tell how the Bills feel about him as a person. Just go back to the regular season finale this year against New England. It's a completely meaningless game. The Bills had nothing team-wise to gain by letting James Cook even see the field in the finale, but they let him get to start, and he stayed out there until he got that 1,000 yards in the first quarter. And maybe even more telling, he comes in the second half, and he gets a rushing touchdown when they get near the goal line, and they were trying to get him a touchdown. That was very obvious. He comes out there, scores, and he ties O.J. Simpson's franchise record. You don't do that if you're not very fond of the player as a person as well. So I don't think it's an issue of, again, how they feel about James Cook as a person. Like, I don't think he's been a problem. I don't know that he will be a problem. It's all about money. It's all about dollars. And one last interesting thing, too, from Sean and Brandon Beane talking at the owners' meeting on Sunday. They were discussing cornerback prospects. Both of them emphasize like tackling is a very strong trait that they want. Brandon Beane said, again, direct quote, I think there's guys out there athletically. I think there are some players that fit what we do. They have to be able to tackle as well. Sometimes you see an athletic freak that turns the ball over, but turns it down when it comes to tackling. That's a non-fit for us. Now, I know this discussion was with prospects, but boy, oh boy, if you were thinking about Asante Samuel Jr. still as a potential free agent signing, you should probably stop. You should probably stop. Asante Samuel Jr. is the epitome of big playability, but a lousy, if not completely unwilling tackler. So that is not happening, folks. Anyway, take a real quick break, come back, and we'll start talking about some of the more promising edge rusher draft prospects for the Bills. All right, we're back. Let's get into some draft prospects here today. And again, we're going to be talking about a lot of these guys. Today, we're just limited to the defensive line, but we're going to be talking about a hell of a lot of these guys and more, plenty over the next handful of weeks, whether it's just discussions or whether it's during our Bills mock draft processes that we're going to be doing. The Bills rostered 11 defensive linemen for most of last season, 6 ends, 5 defensive tackles. If you look at this year, they got Groot, Bosa, Epenesa, Hoehct, and Solomon at edge. Then you got Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Larry Ogunjobi, Dwayne Carter, defensive tackle on this roster. Notable names anyway. They got other guys that are technically on the roster. Those are the notable ones as things stand right now. Those 9 feel like, they're locks to me as things stand right now to make the roster. So if they roster 11, that leaves room for 2 more guys on this year's roster. But it's also muddy and confusing how they approach things with Hoehct and Ogunjobi both missing about a third of the regular season because of their suspensions. And Joey Bosa is probably going to get cuddled a bit with snaps, at least early on in the season. Also, as a reminder, while we look at the upcoming season right now, we're talking about 2025. This draft and no draft is just about one season. It's a projection of the roster over the next handful of seasons. Like Bosa and Epenesa are in the final years of their deals. So that's 2 edge guys right there. So are Daquan Jones and Larry Ogunjobi at defensive tackle. So both like immediate need to help in a rotation and also beyond this year play a factor for sure. Like I said, I bet at least 2 of the first 4 picks are on the defensive line. And they'll almost certainly leave this draft with at least 3 defensive line picks as a whole. When it comes to edge, you can forget about, we're not even going to talk about Carter from Penn State because that's not happening. All right. I'm not going to waste any breath and time talking about him. You can also forget about Jalen Walker from Georgia unless you're planning on moving into the top 10. And I really, really don't think the Bills are looking to do all that. There's some like very likely trade up possibilities, plus some risks in the players that I got 4 guys that I'm talking about here. 3 guys, I'm sorry. But I wouldn't say these 3 are impossible if the Bills want them. And they're not getting them at 30. At least I don't think they'll get them at 30. They would definitely have to trade up. And these would probably be more unlikely trade ups, whether it's because it just had to move up too far or that player may not be worth the risk of moving up that far. Shamir Stewart from Texas, definitely one of them, 6'5", 281. I think a lack of production is concerning, I would think anyway. He only had 2 sacks in each of his last 3 seasons in college. The Athletic wrote, he is the type of prospect who will test the traits over production slogan to which many NFL teams subscribe, as he never had more than 2 sacks in any of his 3 seasons. However, his tape shows a far more disruptive player than his numbers suggest. He led the Aggies in pressures with 39 in 2024. They have him at 9th overall on their big board, the Athletic, and 3rd highest among all edge prospects. So they got him ranked pretty high. He's 27th on PFF's big board, 20th on ESPN. Again, a risk given the lack of production that he had, but based on these boards, it's hard to see him fall into the Bills at 30 if they wanted him. Next guy's Mike Green from Marshall, 6'3", 251 pounds. He could be a trade-up candidate or literally off the board entirely. And I'm not exaggerating, too. There will probably be teams that have him off the board. No idea if the Bills will be one of them. The Bills Brandon Beane would have to feel strong about his character after having what I'm sure would be conversations with him that he's already had or he will have before the draft. He's going to have to feel really good about him as a person. This is a kid who's had 2 allegations of sexual assault, and I know that's following him around. On the field, he's a baller. 17 sacks with Marshall last year, and he also had per PFF, a really good run grade as well. Really well-rounded edge guy. PFF has him 12th on their big board. Ditto for the Athletic. CBS has him at 18th, and ESPN has him to 22nd overall prospect. Again, only teams being scared off of him is possibly going to keep him from falling all the way down to 30 or even near it, in my opinion. If he does, or the Bills, have a chance for a moderate trade up, this is the kind of player we've been talking about. Sooner or later, you take chances on guys, who have some character concerns that, trades or moves where there's risk involved. And you exchange that for like through the roof upside. We saw I remember when Jalen Carter came out a couple years ago, different position, but kind of the same thing. Some of these guys, they fall for various reasons. It could be past all kinds of allegations. Won't get into anything specific, or drug use or whatever, a DWI as a teenager, shit like that makes guys fall down the board. They got suspended in college for whatever. And these teams, you take chances and the upside is through the roof, but they come at a risk. Are the Bills willing to able to play like him? I don't know. Other guy too. One more. I forgot. My bad. So what was it? What did I say? 2? Well, it ended up being more. But anyway, James Pearce Jr. from Tennessee, put him on this list as well. 6'5", 245. Pearce feels like a high risk, high reward with his game, not off the field stuff, but with his game. He's got great speed, great explosion, tons of physical traits. He's a very traitsy dude, but he's kind of undersized. He's got short arms, and that's something that the Bills typically stay away from. The production's there, though. 2 seasons, a starter in the SEC, best conference in the country. 8 sacks this year, 13 the year before. In terms of prospects with the big board, he's 15th on PFF. He's 21st on the Athletic, 16th on ESPN. And he's all the way up at 10 on CBS. All these guys, he's the one I feel best about moving up. If they were to move up 8 or say 5 to maybe 8 spots for something like that, I think I'd feel best about moving up for him, giving up a day 2 pick and maybe something else to get that done. I like him a lot. There's 2 prospects I like that potentially could be had at 30, or at least a reasonable kind of trade up. Again, nothing crazy. And these are 2 guys here. One of them, Donovan Zuraku, 6'3" from BC, 6'3", 248. Strong production at BC. I think he had 14 sacks last year. Just 2 in 23 or 2023, but he had 8 the year before that. So 3 years at BC. Pretty solid run defender as well. Now, he's got the long arms, the traitsy stuff that the Bills seem to like. ESPN writes about him. He's undersized for his edge. I'm sorry. He's undersized for an edge, but his long arms make it tougher for blockers to lock onto him. He tracks the ball, gets off blocks, and wraps up when he tackles. Izuraku bends and closes well, jolting blockers with a strong punch and working off initial contact. He chases with good effort and slips multiple blocks on the same play. He had the quickest three-cone and short shuttle times out of all the edges at the combine. He's the 24th prospect on ESPN, 16th on PFF. As an added bonus, I know Joe B, my guy from The Athletic, pretty high on him, and I have a lot of respect for what Joe B thinks too. So throw him there very much in the mix. And then on Michael Williams from Georgia. He's a very intriguing, interesting prospect as well. So those are 2 guys that, and we'll talk a lot more about him, like I said. I'm sure we'll talk about him on this first upcoming mock draft. I kind of left out details for today because I know we're going to get really into it with him on Thursday, because I think he is a very strong possibility at 30, somebody who could be there at 30, or just like I said, a moderate move up. There's some day 2 guys there for today. I just want to give mention to that I'm sure we'll learn a lot more about, like I said, over the next few weeks through these discussions and these mock draft series. Landon Jackson from Arkansas, 6'6", 273. We've heard that the Bills have talked to him several times. He's said that he feels like a great fit for the Buffalo Bills. So I'm sure we'll talk more about him. Nick Scurlton from Texas, Jack Sawyer, very popular name from Ohio State. He could be in the mix. Jordan Birch from Oregon, Kyle Kennard from South Carolina, and Princely Uman Milan from Ole Miss, 6'4", 264. Really intriguing prospect there. Anyway, one more quick break, come back, and we'll fly through some defensive tackles to wrap today up. All right, we're back. Before I talk about defensive prospects, I want to let you know, too. I mean, I'm sure you know the names. If you listen to this show, there's a good chance you know who I'm talking about. But if you want, among others, two really good recommendations to learn a lot more about the draft and prospects, I can't emphasize this enough. Joe Marino at Locked On Bills, he's sensational at this. And the stuff over at Cover One is just really, really good, especially the film room stuff. Eric Turner, Anthony Rohaska, they do such an incredible job of breaking down film. I'm not afraid or ashamed to say I learn a hell of a lot myself by listening and watching those guys who are some of the very best when they're at work. So definitely carve some time out of your day, if for no other reason, they'll say over the next couple of weeks to learn more about the draft and specifically some of these prospects. Mason Graham, defensive tackle, forget about him. He'll be gone long before the Bills can get him, unless they're looking to give up the entire draft to go do that. So that's not happening. There's 4 defensive tackles that are for sure potential first rounders, either at 30 or could possibly be had by what we'll call a reasonable trade up. And by that, I mean not having, when I say a reasonable trade up, that means not having to give up, say, a future number one to get it done. To me, if you were to give up, say, 30, 62, and maybe a pick swap in the middle or late part of the draft, to me, that's reasonable enough to get something done. To me, what becomes a giant trade is when you start giving up future number ones. So when I say reasonable, I wanted to clarify that. Derrick Harmon from Oregon, 6'5", 310. Kenneth Grant is and probably will remain the most popular possibility, but I'm pretty high on Harmon myself. He's kind of like a one tech, but he's a one with a lot more pass rushing juice. He had 5 sacks with Oregon last season. The Athletic wrote about him, Dane Brugler. Harmon is a player who can win in different ways. He forces blockers to attack air because of his lateral explosiveness, but he also uses strong, crafty hands to swat away their reaches as he bursts through gaps close to the ball carrier. He must become a more consistent finisher, but there wasn't a more disruptive interior defensive lineman in college football this season. He's a 19th prospect on the Athletic, 30th on PFF, 29th on CBS, and 23rd on ESPN. I think Buffalo would have to move up to go get him for sure, and I would do it. I absolutely would do it. He could have day one starting potential next to Ed Oliver at the very least. Seeing a lot of reps right off the bat. Very talented player, high upside. I think he would be a great, great fit for the Buffalo Bills. I think he's a difference maker, a straight up difference maker with the ceiling to be like a Pro Bowl, maybe hell, maybe even an all pro caliber player. I'm not going to say I'd move heaven on earth to go get him, but I would not sit there at 30 and hope that he would be there. I would absolutely move up to go get him. Kenneth Grant from Michigan, 6'4", 331. Big boy, man. A much more prototypical one tech. He makes a lot of sense as the eventual, hell, perhaps like even immediate, potentially anyway, Daquan Jones replacement. 8 sacks over the last 2 years at Michigan, which, he's not that much of a pass rusher. He is a great run stuffer. PFF wrote, Grant brings a rare combination of quickness and size of the nose tackle position. He has the strength to dominate single blocks and hold up against doubles. Let me stop right there. Does that not sound like something the Buffalo Bills could really use on this defense right now? The strength to dominate single blocks and hold up against doubles. I mean, you want Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano behind you to have some success. Teron Johnson, man, this sounds like a good guy to have on your team. All right, I'll continue. When he's in attack mode, He's an opposing player. I just wish we saw that aggressive mindset more consistently. 17th on the PFF big board, 26th on the Athletic, 30th on CBS, 35th on ESPN. There's a better chance he's there at 30 than Harmon, but again, I also would not bet on it. If you haven't noticed already, I'm a big fan of Brandon Beane trading up for a guy this year because whether it's defensive tackle, and we're just hitting on some now, a couple bench guys we just talked about, potential corners, which we'll discuss another day. One of those three positions, I'm not sitting there at 30 and waiting to lose out on the guy that I really covet in the last 2 or 3 picks. Go up 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7 picks or so and go get a guy. This is one of them that I think would be worth it as well. Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, 6'4", 296. ESPN writes Nolan had 14 and a half tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks last season. He's an outstanding run defender who wins in different ways. He slips blocks and gets into the backfield. He also stacks and get-offs blocks. Nolan splits and fights off double teams. He has the range and motor to make plays in pursuit. He works half the man and can beat blockers with his hands. He has a high upside as a pass rusher. 29th in the Athletic, 23rd on PFF, 17th on the CBS big board, 26th on ESPN. I'm unsure on him if he's a 1 tech or a 3 tech with the Bills. And I'm also not even sure at this point if it matters or if it matters as much as some of us think that it does. I still got more work to do on this guy, to be honest with you, before I have a definitive opinion on him. But one thing I know for sure, given where he is on the big boards and what other people are saying about him, 100% absolutely in play for the Bills in the first round. And then the last guy, Tyleik Williams, Ohio State, 6'2", 322. The Athletic writes, although his production won't jump off the page, Williams' impact as a dominant run defender is much clearer on tape. He needs further development as a pass rusher, but he is one of this class's best run defending linemen because of his recognition skills and disciplined execution, deconstructing blocks. Translation, your boy is a run-stuffing one-tech guy. Certainly seems like a good fit. The Athletic has him at 33, PFF at 37, CBS at 47, and ESPN at 68. If the Bills keep the pick at 30, Williams seems to be maybe by far most likely of these options to still be available when Buffalo's on the clock. And I also think he's a good fit for them as well. So, given that, if I was being forced right now to make a bet, I was being forced to make a bet on who the Bills pick right now today and that they stay at 30, I think Williams would be in my top 5 betting favorites and probably not number 5 either. And again, that's if they stay at 30 and they don't move up. Lastly, I want to mention 5 strong day 2 possibilities. And again, a couple of these guys might get into the late first round as well. This is a pretty deep defensive tackle group. The thing is, with where the Bills pick, if you might think 30 might be too early, but you could also say 56 and 62. 56 may be too late. Like the run on defensive tackles may be gone before the Bills pick again at 56. So if let's just say you go corner in the first round or you go edge in the first round, but you really want a defensive tackle, and so you don't use 30, I don't think you can count. And even with the guys that I'm saying in a second here, any of them necessarily being available at 56. So you might see it again. This is going to be part of the fun mock draft scenarios that we'll be discussing over the next few weeks is, you know what? You might have to package 56 and something else to get up to make sure you go get, if not one of the guys we mentioned, one of these, say 5 guys that are going to be possibilities. And again, 1 or 2 of these guys might end up in the first round too, for all you know. Darius Alexander from Toledo, Joshua Farmer from FSU, Jordan Phillips. Yes, Jordan Phillips, another defensive tackle named Jordan Phillips from Maryland, Alfred Collins from Texas, and Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee. Definitely possibilities as well. And like I said, I think early 20s through, say, maybe the mid to late 40s. Let's say late 40s. I'll bet you anything right now here as we're getting near the end of March and into April. going to tell you this right now. I'd be willing to bet there's going to be a big run on defensive tackles from the early 20s through, say, the end of the 40s. So if the Bills are not going DT in the first round, I can tell you right now, I foresee them moving up from 56 to go get one of those guys in round 2. And the funny thing is, some of them we just mentioned in passing or whatever, but these names that you've heard today, there's a good chance that 2 names that you heard today end up being a Buffalo Bill before the end of April. Anyway, all right, it's going to do it for today's show. Honestly, kind of had to throw this together last minute. This was supposed to be Monday's taping for Tuesday's show, but like I said, things got kind of screwed up last minute. Now, if you'd like to watch this on the video side, like I said, Monday, 9 p.m., Joe from Queens will be with me. Gonna have some fun too. We're gonna have some fun topics. The Bills, that Hallmark holiday movie, A Touchdown Love Story or Bill's Love Story, whatever the hell that shit is. Got some fun plots to talk about. Got a fun fantasy scenario that if you had to trade Josh Allen, if the NFL said you can't have Josh Allen, you got to trade him one-on-one for a player, and his name can't be Patrick Mahomes, who would it be? We'll have that conversation, plenty of stuff coming up on the show. Like I said, Monday night, video side live, Tuesday podcast. Thank you very much for watching, for listening. Be back 9 p.m. Monday. Talk to you guys soon.